Hi, everybody, and welcome to week 3. I hope you're all doing well. So now in this part of the course, we're actually going to use the materials that we have collected. Before we start thinking about our projects this week, I also want to show you all some examples of really interesting illustrators working with narrative in different formats. For example, I really enjoy Brecht Evans' work. So he's a Belgian illustrator, and he's working mostly in the genre of comics, but his comics are very innovative in the way that he builds the story, and he has like a very specific visual language, and he has a very specific visual style. And so I really recommend that you look up his work online. The book that I'm talking about here, he makes graphic novels, and which are like longer comics. So The Wrong Place is the one I'm recommending that you guys look at, but you can feel free to find any of his works online, and I guarantee you'll be impressed by how intricate and how detailed everything is, but also he's really like skilled at creating narrative through his illustration. I also really like the illustrator Lisk Fang, and I think that her work is really varied, and it's also, I really like this simple graphic style. So the reason that I'm showing you work by different illustrators is so that you can start to think about what style you might want to create your work in. I just mean that there is no correct answer for this question. I just want to show you a range of different styles. So for example, Brecht Evans' work is very, very complicated. The compositions are very detailed, and the use of color is really unusual, and he's layering the colors and mixing the colors. But for example, in this example by Lisk Feng, I think you can also see how nicely it works when you just have black and white. So especially for a project like this, I would probably recommend to choose a simpler technique or a simpler option or a simpler color scheme, just because we don't have so long to get it done. And making something in the kind of Brecht Evans style is maybe not possible in this time frame. Another example I would like to give you is Blex Bollocks. He is a French illustrator, and he lives in Berlin. I'm a super fan of his work, just because I think I really like the very bold graphic style that he has. And I also think he's a good example of what I was talking about earlier in the course, just that he always has this limited color palette, and it's very bold and strong. He's a printmaker, and he makes everything in these color layers like a printmaker does, for example, for silkscreen printing. Yeah, I just really like this kind of poppy, bold, kind of retro style. He's also working in the genre of graphic novels, but he's quite diverse as well, and he's also made children's books and things like that. So again, if you look him up online, I gave you a recommendation for his book, No Man's Land, but you can find a whole lot of different work from him online. He's very, very active and always producing things. This is Chia Chi Yu. I actually don't know too much about this illustrator, but I found them online recently, and I really fell in love with the work. I just wanted to also show you this to say that, it's very possible for you to also work with a mixed media approach for the final result. So I don't have a problem with people, for example, using a little bit of collage or something like this in their process, and then mixing it with ink or mixing it with drawing. I think particularly in the picture on the left, it's very satisfying to look at. There's a really nice balance of the solid shapes and the drawn elements over the top. and a nice little bit of pattern on the coat. So, I mean, it's just a really good example of how to balance your images and how to kind of contrast the solid color with maybe some texture or something like this. And this is an example of another illustrator that works with making comics. So she basically specializes in comics and graphic novels as well. Aisha France. So she's also located in Germany, which is where I live actually. And I saw her work in St. Petersburg some years ago and really fell in love with her style. It's really interesting, and she's also like a very active producer of work, and I also really recommend that you look up her work online because she does a lot of really interesting things with how she uses the page, and everything is so well designed. And also she's a really good storyteller this week. So the first part is that I would love you guys to do some research and maybe like go and find some more examples of some of those recommended illustrators that I gave you. The second part is the practical part. So I want you to use the material that you have collected. So I want you to use the material that you collected in week 1 and week 2. And I want you to brainstorm, and I want you to come up with an idea, or maybe 2 or 3 ideas is also fine. And I want you to write down your idea in text. So you can write down just the concept, or you can write down, for example, if you have a plot, you can write down the plot of your story or the narrative, yeah? So this is the first step before you do anything else. And for this step, I'm really happy that you just do it in text. If you feel very strongly that you want to draw, you can draw some very, very, very simple images to just accompany your text. But please, like, don't spend too long on the images, and just make them as basic as possible. So the idea is that you can like take one of the people that you sketched in the first week, and you can imagine some other story for them. You can imagine some interesting aspect of their life, or you can imagine something about their routine, or maybe they have superpowers, or maybe they're an alien from another planet, or, I mean, you can basically take this real person and you can transform them into whoever you want them to be. And it's the same idea with the sketches that you have about places. One idea, which I had when I first came up with this concept, is that maybe it's, maybe it could be a fun idea to take a person that you drew in week 1 and then combine them with a location or a place that you drew in week 2. I think this is like maybe the easiest way to approach this task, especially if you're having problems coming up with ideas. There is no perfect advice I can give you about brainstorming. Sometimes you come up with an excellent idea very fast, and sometimes it takes a bit longer. And the next part, once you have the text, then I want you to spend some time thinking about how you're going to translate this idea, this concept, or this narrative into images. And you also need to make a decision at this stage, and it's a very important decision, so think about it. What is your final work going to be? So I'm giving you 3 choices. You can create one single image, but the single image can't just be decorative. It has to have some narrative in it. It has to have some kind of storytelling in it. What type of storytelling? This is your choice. The second option is that maybe you want to make like a mini series of images. So you might want to make like 2 images that connect together, or possibly 3. They also need to have a narrative. And then the third option, you can obviously understand that I'm suggesting this because I was showing you work by comic book artists. It might be fun to experiment with making a short comic about the concept that you have come up with. So yeah, those are the basic options that you have. And the idea with making the storyboards or sketches is that you are like, this is your planning process. Okay, so this is like what you need to do before next week so that you can progress and get to the final versions. So those are some sketches that are basically like storyboards that I made not so long ago. And I mean, there is some detail in there, but they're not extremely, they're not like finished work or anything. And you don't even need to be so fussy like I was with these ones. I think the main thing is just that you need to be able to communicate your idea with these images.
This is another example of some of my sketches that I made in preparation for making like a more polished picture in terms of jotting down my ideas and visually and working out the composition ahead of time. So these are 3 compositional ideas for basically the same image. And you can see that I was just kind of playing around with the placement of figures. Also, which figures were going to be in the picture at all, and which part of the scene I thought looked the best for the final illustration.
You definitely need to spend some time on this because often the first solution that you come up with is not necessarily the best one. Yeah. So for example, if you are going to make like a draft for a single image, then I would probably sketch out 3 or 4 ideas first before I went on to make the final image. If you're going to make comics, you definitely have a lot of planning to do because comics have a lot of extra elements. And you need to think about all of this, and you need to think about like the layout of the page for the comics. And it's probably going to be harder work than the other 2 options that I gave you. So if you don't have a lot of time or energy at the moment, then maybe I would not choose to make comics for this course. About the quantity of work you need. So the first thing you need is you need to write your story or narrative. And again, it doesn't need to be detailed and it doesn't need to be complicated. The simpler, the better. And this can just be as words. Or if you feel very strongly that you want to do something visual, you can make some very, very, very basic images just to like help your thinking process. And then the second thing that you need to produce this week is like a set of simple storyboards. And as I've said here, black and white. So something, very basic. And this needs to be planning for either like a single image or a small series of narrative images or some short comics. What advice can I give you? So at this stage, we are generating ideas, and this can be challenging and it can be tiring. And the main thing is to get to a point where you have a clear idea of what you're going to make. I really encourage you not to focus on the quality of the images at the moment, because this is not the main point of this stage of the course. You just need to draw well enough so that you can show it to other people and other people can understand. And think about the page limit as well. So it's a good challenge to make short comics actually, because like you are forced to think of smart solutions. And then the extra advice for people who are going to make comics is that they're a very, very interesting topic, and it's possible to do a whole course just about comics actually. But they also have like a very special style, and it's really a good idea if you decide you want to make something like that you should also research comics in general. So panels, so I mean the parts, little boxes, they're not always boxes, but the little parts of the page that have the action in them, they're called panels in English. Framing and things like typography, they all work together to give a certain feeling or to give a certain effect or atmosphere. So in the PDF that I'm giving you guys this week, I've put a link to my Pinterest board because I spend a lot of time collecting examples of illustration and other things on Pinterest, and I have a pretty large collection of comics, like alternative comics. Okay, that's a lot of information. I'm sorry about that. I hope that everything was clear. If it's not for some reason, of course, you can always contact me. So good luck with the planning. Good luck with the brainstorming and the ideas generation, and let's see what you can come up with. Okay, good luck.